Hi friends, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Here's what we're discussing today. Well, I have to tell you, it is so good to see people who are really good at their job. After the Crumbly trial and the Adam Montgomery trial, I had just about given up hope. I mean, there were lawyers in both of those cases that did an adequate job, but there really weren't people who were hitting home runs every day. And in this case, there are. Now, I have some comments about the testimony, but first I wanted to talk about some general issues. And the first of those is defenses. Defenses, whether you're putting on a defense of a tort lawsuit or whether you're putting on the defense of a criminal trial, basically boil down to just a few. In the civil law or the tort law area, we often refer to it as the not my dog defense. In other words, it wasn't my dog, it didn't bite you. If it did bite you, you deserve to get bit, and what are you hollering about? You weren't hurt anyway. Those are the four big defenses in a tort case, and it doesn't matter what kind of tort case it is. You just substitute defective product for dog or bad doctor for medical negligence, and you've got the defenses. Here, I think the not my dog defense is going to come up in an obscure way. Basically, it isn't this defendant. She disclaims having put this live round in the firearm, and the problem for the state is they are not going to be able to prove that she did it. They can establish a lot of circumstantial evidence, but they can't establish that she actually put the live round in there. Now, they're going to try to make that point, but I think they really have a long way to go on that score. And the way that the defense is going about doing that is through challenging the forensic evidence and the chain of custody, which we'll see today in the clips that I've pulled out. Then another way that you go there, particularly if you're doing a product liability claim or a medical negligence claim under the civil law, is you have the experts disagree, right? You get one doctor who comes in and says, Dr. Schmo over there was the worst doctor. I don't understand how he ever got out of medical school. The guy probably can't tie his shoes without instructions on the floor. And he screwed this up so bad it isn't believable. I mean, you can't believe anything this guy says because he's a nut. And then the defense comes in and says, well, I don't know what that other guy was talking about. And this guy is Albert Schweitzer. He's Jonas Salk inventing the vaccine for polio. This guy is absolutely a saint with a white coat on. He isn't a guy who's negligent. Oh, for heaven's sakes, no. So the experts disagree. Well, the state is going to call experts in this case, and the defense is going to call experts, and that's exactly what you're going to get. And it's going to come down, at least on the expert witnesses, to the quality of the expert and the quality of their testimony, and perhaps most importantly, to the quality of the cross-examination of all of those witnesses. For those of you who've seen every episode of Matlock, you know that there are always things that come out in trial that nobody is expecting. And unfortunately, there are not a lot of Matlock moments or, whether maybe it's Perry Mason moments. There's not a lot of aha moments in a trial. But in this case, what the theme of the defense seems to be is it is not what we know that's important, it's what we don't know. So as I said, if you may have guessed on day one, this is going to be a forensics case, and the theory is going to be that the production company tampered with the physical evidence in an attempt to scapegoat this gal who looks a lot like Taylor Swift with brown hair. I know, now you won't be able to not see it. You're welcome. Here, the defense is going to play on the sympathy of the jury. She's a young woman. She's trying to break into a man's world. She's overworked. She's underpaid. They saddled additional jobs on her. My guess is if they put her on the stand, and they'll only do that if they feel like they need to, they can put her on if she is able to hold her own. And that's a pretty significant question. Now, if it comes down to who knows firearms better, I'm going to bet on Taylor Swift with brown hair. If it comes down to getting some other information in there, she may turn out to be Taylor not too Swift. I just don't know. But that's kind of where I'm thinking that they're probably going to go when it comes to the defense's time to put on a case. Now, I want to look at some testimony from day 2, and the first witness we're going to look at is the crime scene investigator.
Is this the same Dentix round that we admitted into evidence yesterday?
It is not.
It is not. Okay. This is just a round that was in that box that didn't shake.
Correct.
Okay. And did you do anything with that round?
We sent that round to the FBI because it was of concern, and their determination was that the ball bearings were stuck inside of it.
Okay.
Now, the prosecutor is doing a good job here. She's asking good, open-ended questions. She knows where she's going, and she's able to get the witness to that place. And of course, what she's focusing on here with the crime scene investigator are the dummy rounds, the rounds that are supposed to be dummy rounds. And, for example, why weren't dummy rounds able to be shaken and figure out what they are? But as good as this is, I think they may have wished they hadn't put this young lady up because she doesn't really have the background to go into a lot of this. Let's watch the defendant put some points up on the board here.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Now, I want to talk to you first about your training and your job and what you've been trained on as a crime scene technician. Can you tell the jury a little bit about your training?
Yes, I have my bachelor's degree in forensics. I've had over 1,000 additional hours of in-classroom training over various different forensic areas such as blood pattern analysis, latent print analysis, crime scene reconstruction, those kinds of areas.
Okay, and has that included firearm and ammunition training and determining the difference between types of ammunition?
Not that specific, no.
Okay, so what is the scope of your training you've had on determining different types of ammunition?
I mean, are you specifically referring to
Calibers, 4440, 38, 45, you've been trained on recognizing the differences?
that? I have, yes.
Okay. And how about recognizing the differences between dummy rounds, blanks, and live rounds?
I have not been to that type of training, no.
Okay. So your testimony earlier when you were talking about the dummy rounds and the various measurements and that, you have not been trained in that area?
No.
Okay. Now, part of your training in terms of verifying that a round is either a dummy or a live round is you need to send that to the FBI lab for confirmation. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Because some of the dummy rounds appear like live rounds. They look like live rounds, correct?
Yes.
In fact, the round that came out of the box we saw earlier that did not shake, you sent that off to the FBI lab because you wanted to confirm what that was, correct?
Yes.
And part of the thing the FBI does is they take apart the round and they determine if it has powder in it. Is that right?
Yes.
And when they do that, that tells them basically if it's a live round or a dummy. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
So would you also agree in your training that you've never been taught that you can eyeball a dummy and determine if it's a dummy or a live, or eyeball a round and determine if it's a dummy or live?
No, I've not been trained in that area.
Okay.
So what he's saying here is you know a lot about forensics, but not a lot about ammunition and firearms. Let's watch.
And you would also agree with me that you can't look at a picture of a round and determine necessarily if it's a dummy or a live?
I would disagree with that.
And why would you disagree?
The rounds that have holes drilled into the side of them or the primers removed appear to visibly be dummy rounds.
And those do. Now, how about the rounds that don't shake, don't have a hole in them, and you're looking at that? You can't tell just by looking at it that's live or dummy, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, that I thought was a very, very effective cross-examination of this woman because it does work very well with the theme of the defense case. Now we go to talking about more general things with respect to crime scene investigation and crime scene analysis.
Okay. And your job at that time as a crime scene technician is to secure the scene, secure the evidence. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Part of your goal in securing the evidence is to make sure that you get it right, you get the chain of custody right, and you make sure that's logged. Is that right?
Yes.
Why is the chain of custody so important?
The chain of custody is essentially the tracking of where the item originated from to who has possession of it now and everything in between.
Okay. And if there is a break in the chain of custody, that's a problem for you in terms of verifying that evidence, correct?
Yes.
Now, if before you got there, Miss Zachary had thrown rounds away and she had taken items from the prop cart to the prop truck, that could cause problems with the chain of custody, correct?
Well, if someone were to remove evidence from a scene, it wouldn't just cause problems for chain of custody, it would cause problems because we no longer have that evidence.
Correct. In fact, if you don't have evidence, it's lost. That's a serious problem in a case like this, correct?
So he makes the point that you have to secure the scene and you have to secure the evidence. And I think she made the best point that's been made for the defense so far when she said this.
Well, if someone were to remove evidence from a scene, it wouldn't just cause problems for chain of custody, it would cause problems because we no longer have that evidence.
Correct.
Well, these are serious lawyers, and this is a serious defense of this young woman. And the prosecutors are also serious, and it's obvious that the female prosecutor is an excellent prosecutor. I think that these lawyers are pretty evenly matched, and they appear to be doing this in the most professional way possible. In other words, the lawyers aren't taking anything that the other guy says seriously. They're not being angry because the other side scores a point. Now, you saw in the Murdaugh trial how absolutely furious Dick Harpootlian got when the other side would do something that irritated him. And I feel like anytime a lawyer does that, they're either doing it for show, this is so unfair, or they're doing it because they don't know how to act like a professional lawyer. I'll let you decide which of the two that is in Murdaugh's case. But here, they are serious, they're professional, they're talking about the evidence, they're talking about whether or not objections need to be made, and of course, when objections do need to be made, they go up and talk to the judge. I think this is going to be a very enjoyable trial to watch, even though I don't necessarily agree that this young lady ought to have been prosecuted in the first place. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments, please leave them in the comments down below. And I'm going to put my little please subscribe commercial at the end of this. But of course, if you do feel so inclined, I'd love to have you as a subscriber. And all you folks who have subscribed, I love you too. Thanks again for doing that. So I wanted to talk for a moment about what I saw the other day at my local Quick Trip here in Auburn. And the reason this is interesting or good for me, I think, in terms of how it played out, is that there are some people who are just really good people. Now, there was a young woman, a young blonde girl, who had 2 children, and they were probably 4 or 5, and she had taken them to Quick Trip to get the small sodas, and she hadn't been able to get a lid on one of them, and the young child spilled it all over the floor. You know, this is what children do. You can't get too upset about that. But instead of getting upset, she started pulling out napkins and trying to blot this up. And I knew from talking with my friends at Quick Trip that they would not have wanted that because, first of all, the napkins are more expensive than a mop. And second of all, this is not how they wanted their customers to spend their time. You know, the reason they put erasers on pencils is because everybody makes mistakes, and certainly that's what happened with this young child. So I went over and told the manager on duty, a young lady by the name of Noelle. I said, hey, there's a lady over there who spilled, that her child spilled some soda. It probably needs to be cleaned up. And she jumped up and went immediately and took care of the young lady. And I had told the young lady, look, you don't need to do that. I'm going to go over and tell them that you've had this spill and they will mop it up. And she was trying to wrangle two children at the same time. She was trying to clean the floor. And so sometimes if you know things like that, it's really helpful to share them, because there is nobody who has more stress than a young mom trying to deal with two kids after a spill in a store. So I throw that out there for you. If you want to be kind to people, you can always find multiple ways to do it. And you'll have a better day if you do. I know I had a better day as a result of that. Thanks so much for watching, and feel free to come back and join me down here tomorrow at the beach. I try very hard not to be like all those other YouTubers who open up every video by asking you to subscribe before you've even seen the content. But now that you've gone a few minutes into the content, if you find this interesting and helpful, please subscribe. I'd consider it a personal favor. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.